The tech world is undergoing a massive transformation. With AI coding agents and LLMs rolling out everywhere, engineers are being pushed to adapt or risk falling behind. Watching AI improve this rapidly is giving a lot of people a real sense of existential dread, leaving us all asking the giant question, am I about to be replaced? Will there even be a need for software engineers soon? And what will working in tech actually look like in the future? Hi, I'm Dan. I'm a machine learning engineer at a large tech company, and today I'm going to be giving my prediction for what tech jobs will look like in the future. As we are of course talking about the future, nobody knows what that would look like, so this whole video is technically speculation. Yet I see so much anxiety among young people trying to choose the right career, and so much FUD and noise going around that I hope that with this video, to offer a fair and rational counterbalance to shift the discourse to a more optimistic yet realistic direction. Though I am talking about tech, my points broadly apply to many other technical white-collar professions out there, like accounting, law, and finance. My core thesis is that right now, our society favors specialized roles. Yet with the rise of generative AI, we're going to start to see a shift from a demand for specialists to a demand for broader generalists, or in other words, a demand for polymaths. What do I mean by this? Well, let's find out. But before we move on, let's address the giant elephant in the room. Will there even be space for people in the workforce in the future? Short answer, yes, most likely. I am assuming with high confidence that there will be jobs, including tech jobs and software jobs, in the future. I actually made a whole video urging people not to worry too much about AGI or artificial general intelligence, so do check that out if you're curious. But in the comment section of the video, I got a fair amount of pushbacks from people expressing how AI is meant to replace human labor completely, and how they fear that it will happen in the future. To that, let me just offer some quick counterpoints for why humans are not getting replaced anytime soon. 1. Current LLMs show high competency or rapidly improving competency in many technical skills, like coding and such. However, all these systems lack agency, requiring human prompting, thought, and oversight. And when I say agency, I'm not talking about the agents that are just LLMs with tool access running on a loop. I'm talking about initiative. AI might know how to do something, but they don't know what to do, nor do they implicitly understand what makes good or bad design. For example, an AI will help me write an ML workflow management tool. But if I ask it to say, integrate my credit card info into the platform, most LLMs will do it without telling me that my idea is really stupid. Plus, as AI is a tool, it can't be held accountable for anything it does that requires precision and accuracy. It needs human supervision. 2. There's no trajectory for AI to gain true agency and autonomy, even when so-called AGI comes. This is especially true of LLM-based AI. Any argument to the contrary comes from science fiction. Go watch my video on the topic to learn more. 3. Now some of you might be saying, AI doesn't need agency. It just needs to get good enough to replace 99% of people. Like, what if it gets so good that anyone can just prompt it with, start a business for me, or run, maintain, and improve the Google search system for me, and AI does the rest? To that I say, with LLMs, it's not super likely, as LLMs are at the end of the day, complex probability models. They can't actually model the future, and letting them run on these super broad tasks will be A, very expensive, and B, will likely result in a lot of unforeseen issues and new problems to solve. But let's say for the sake of argument that such tech does come about, and for very cheap too. Then us humans will have to figure out how to adapt, because a society with mass unemployment is not one that can survive. And if history has shown anything, is that people will choose self-preservation over anything else. So in that case, we would expect massive amounts of regulation on this kind of AI use. To summarize, I'm assuming that there'll be more than enough work in the future to go around, with the AI world opening up a whole new frontier of possibilities that we can't even fathom right now. But let's not be naive though. Tech jobs will look very different in the future than they do today. And that leads us to the meat of the video, the discussion around generalists versus specialists. David Epstein, in his 2019 book Range, How Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World, defines a generalist as someone who isn't a hyper-specialized expert in any given field, but who understands the bigger picture and is more keenly able to adapt to what the author calls wicked scenarios, aka unforeseen circumstances that fall outside the depth of a given expert. In contrast, the hyper-specialist is an expert at their given subfield, but oftentimes has a harder time seeing the forest through the trees, so to speak. Oftentimes, the best teams consist of generalists driving the vision while calling on the expertise of different specialists depending on what the situation calls for. One example of a generalist that David mentions is that of Nintendo's famous Gunpei Yokoi, the inventor who played a great influence in turning Nintendo into the gaming juggernaut that it is today, first pushing it into a toy company in the late 1960s, and then into a gaming company in the 1980s, with his magnum opus, the Game Boy, revolutionizing the field of handheld gaming for many decades to come. Yokoi had some high-level knowledge of electrical engineering, yet his contributions came from having a range of knowledge across the industry, customer needs, etc., He knew what to build, but he just lacked the how, and leaned heavily on true electrical engineering experts like Satoru Okada for the specific hardware implementation. We can see this generalist specialist dynamic playing out in the tech world, with PMs or product managers taking the role of the generalists and software engineers taking the role of the specialists. The PM as the generalist has to understand the product, the customer needs, and drive the overall vision for the product that they are developing. Meanwhile, us engineers have to have deep technical depth, and this depth helps the PM drive the vision forward. Even within engineering teams, experienced engineers and tech leads can often play the role of the high-level generalist, understanding what systems to build, what problems to solve, and what trade-offs to make, with lower-level engineers being the technical specialists implementing the tech lead's vision. I think you see where this is going. Up until recently, if a PM needed help, he would have to ask or, prompt the engineering team to implement part of the vision for him. And if a tech lead needed help, she would need to go to her lower level engineers to handle the implementation. But as AI gets better and better, these generalists, so to speak, can now simply prompt an AI, only leaning on a very small amount of experts to make sure that everything is kosher under the hood. This is where the mass unemployment concern comes from. But two things. One, we still need junior engineers to eventually become senior engineers or risk a generation of unemployed people. And two, there will always be demand for new solutions and new frontiers. Even if FANG won't need as many employees, other industries like biotech companies or high reliability embedded systems companies might. But if an engineer is just coding blindly like they did in 2019, there really isn't a reason they won't be replaced by AI. There needs to be a push for engineers to operate as generalists, using AI or whatever future tools emerge to adapt to rapidly shifting scenarios. In fact, if I had to guess, I'd say future teams will be mostly tech generalists with a few specialists sprinkled in, all sharing different gradations of knowledge, a true fusion of the data science, software engineer, and PM roles. To see what I mean by this, I think it's important to understand that the hyper-specialized world we live in today is only a recent phenomenon, going back about 100 years or so. Before then, most people, including the most in-demand elite, were generalists. Before the Industrial Revolution, specialists made up a small subset of the population, typically artisans like blacksmiths, shoemakers, scribes, etc. However, among the elite, it was most admirable to be a polymath, a Renaissance man, or generalist, aka someone who has a broad understanding of many different fields. From the Renaissance artists of Italy, to the groups of humanist scholars improving and refining navigation equipment, to Newton, to the US founding fathers, arguably one of the most impactful team of generalists in history, these polymaths made a huge impact on the world at large. But this wasn't just an elite phenomenon. For everyday people, the division of labor was rarely a clean-cut reality. We see ordinary folks relying on a broad, adaptable skill set out of pure necessity. For example, during massive historical migrations from medieval settlers in Eastern Europe and Japan to 19th century American pioneers building cabins from scratch, surviving the wilderness meant that you couldn't just rely on one trade. You had to figure out a little bit of everything. However, in our post-industrial era, as technology progressed and became more complex, it became more economically efficient and lucrative to hyper-specialize, and market demand for specialists of all types skyrocketed. Masters in the craft became hyper-respected people who more or less had a moat around them, making their talent irreplaceable. And increasingly, generalists began to be seen with disdain as jacks of all trades, but masters of none. Yet now with AI, we're starting to see a new shift. One where the moat that experts built up around themselves could suddenly vanish overnight, greatly diminishing the demand for experts. At the same time, with AI's limitation around showing agency, and with the rapidly changing world, it'll make sense for companies to start hiring tech workers with a wide range of abilities, outside of just the being able to code well bubble. Two recent anecdotal examples come to mind to illustrate this point. The first one's that I had a recent discussion with one of my friends about whether or not he should go into becoming a GPU kernel optimization expert. As word on the street is that Anthropic is paying boatloads of cash to all who have this deep knowledge. Yet the takeaway from our discussion was that this is too risky a pursuit, as GPU optimization could be a solved problem by the time this friend achieves expertise, even a year from now, and the demand would have completely shifted to something else. In contrast, while researching on how to grow a YouTube channel in the era of AI-generated slop, I came across the interesting concept of niche bending, basically taking an established video format and applying it to a totally unrelated niche. The best example of this concept is a channel called Tierzoo, a channel that presents animal biology as if the animals are Smash Bros characters. It's telling that this concept is so popular right now, yet no amount of brainstorming sessions with Gemini would organically lead me to discover a viable niche bend like that. It's a sign of people adapting and innovating to changing circumstances, seeing the forest for the trees, and leveraging YouTube's recommendation algorithm to serve content to audiences who wouldn't have been interested otherwise. But back to tech. With the rapid pace of change and the lowering barrier of entry to specific expertise, I won't be surprised to see the broader industry trending in this direction. Eventually, tech teams will start looking less like the hyper-specialized factory assembly lines that we see today, and more like a team of polymaths. So if you're a college student or an engineer, what does this all mean for you? And how do you become a better generalist? Well, I think that the advice that David Epstein gave in his book, Range, aged incredibly well, but it all comes down to one thing. Keep learning and be curious about the world around you. Continue to improve your engineering skills, but also get outside the tech bubble. Read a lot. And I don't just mean engineering documents. Study history, philosophy, human behavior, biology, another language, develop a critical thinking skills, work on communication, etc., etc. And most importantly, have fun with it. There's no pressure to become an expert in any of these fields. Just don't stop learning and don't stop being curious of the world around you. So what are all your thoughts on this? Does this future seem plausible? Or do you think there won't be as many opportunities in tech in the near future? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, then I'd love it if you subscribe. I plan to make many more videos in the near future, both deep dives into machine learning and less technical videos like this one. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.